This
expensive.
conference will now be recorded.
So once you have this Snow Pro certification cleared, right, you are 30% more marketable. People, the companies look at it. The reason the examination is expensive. Most of the times, the current company which you are working for, right, they might support you to pay the fees. If that is the case, you will have the best advantage. Okay, it costs about $175 or something, including tax and everything. So if you have this one, right, then you are 30% more marketable. So in the Snow Pro examination, architecture is the one which out of 100 questions, 30 questions comes from architecture. Okay, so I want you to focus, and then this is the fundamentals basically. If you're trying to learn a new technology, you want to know the basics of everything, right? This helps you. So that is the reason I'm going to start with architecture one more time. But the folks who have already listened or attended this session, bear with me, and we'll once the architecture is done, right, we'll go with the data ingestion and all this stuff. Okay, and we will be. I'll tell you how to sign up for a trial account, and then I'll tell you how to download a SnowSQL command line interface. These are the two things that we will be connecting to Snowflake. Okay. Okay. And let me go ahead and then open my slide deck. Okay. So okay. So you guys can see my screen.
Uh, yes.
Okay. Thank you. So let's talk about the Snowflake architecture. So what is Snowflake and what kind of questions that you can get in interviews are Snow Pro. I'm gonna talk about it as well. So what Snowflake is a software as a service. So what kind of service is it? They want people wanted to hear SaaS. Yes, yeah, yeah, yes, software as a service. This is one of the interview question as well. And how many are you working on Snowflake by any chance right now? Or are you working on Snowflake and join this course by any chance? None, right? Okay, cool. So if I know that, right, then I can probably orient my class more on the interview preparation as well as in the Snow Pro questions and all this stuff, right? That would benefit you more. If somebody is already working, then it doesn't help them more, kind of thing. So that was the reason I was asking. Okay, okay, then, cool. So Snowflake is an analytical platform. Something like you think you would have already worked on any of the database environments like Oracle, SnowSQL, sorry, SQL Server, MySQL, or Hive, and Big Data. Any of these platforms, they work like a database, and you can have them in your premises. That means you have to install the software. But Snowflake, you don't need to install anything at all. It's something similar to your database that is sitting on the public cloud, like www.amazon.com. However, you access that, right? The public domain, the same way you can access your Snowflake account. So that provides you a software as a service or data warehousing as a service. That means Snowflake can be used for decision making systems. The database that you use you cannot build an e-commerce on top of it, or you cannot build a banking applications. So that is not something that is used. This is used for data warehousing purposes. So whenever we talk about data warehouse, right? What is a data warehouse? There are different terminologies. You might get confused if you are not into data warehouse. And then I'm gonna give you a session on data modeling and everything, because there are a lot of people who doesn't have the data warehousing background, right? Whenever you get interviewed, people expect little bit of database knowledge out of you, data modeling knowledge out of it. What is a star schema? What is a snowflake schema? What are facts table? What is a dimension table? How do you do it? So I have a separate session for people who doesn't have the data warehousing modeling techniques.
Okay. So
Guys, can you hear me? Was the last for a couple of?
Few seconds we couldn't hear you, but now we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So Snowflake can be used as EDW, Enterprise Data Warehouse. Snowflake can be used as ODS, Operational Data Store. So what is this meaning means? You can build your data models using Snowflake as a database. Okay. Snowflake is a database or a technology that can be used for enterprise data warehousing purposes or operational data store purposes. That means you use different techniques, different models in your data warehouse to run your business or to do your business intelligence on top of it. So in ODS or in EDW, you can create a star schema which has facts and dimension tables, so that using these models, right, you can maintain your or you can do your business and intelligence much more effectively, so that you can run your reports, you can run your dashboards, you can run your analytics and everything. So the model is used for maintaining your data with ease. And this database is, you can use any database, not only Snowflake. So you can use Oracle, you can use, that's what happening in the mm, on-premise systems. Now with Snowflake, right, you can do it in the cloud basically. That's the only difference. You can use any database for your data modeling purposes, for your business decisions. That means if you want to do and be a if you want to build a business intelligence, then you can use any database. And Snowflake is the best of them. It gives a lot of performance. The price is very economical and all this stuff. It's a cloud pay as you go model. How much you use, that much only you're going to pay and all this stuff. But if you want to have an operational data store, or if you want to have an enterprise data warehouse, then you have to do some modeling inside this. And that's where these star schema, fact tables, dimension tables come. Why do we use modeling techniques? So that it becomes easy to maintain your data. It becomes easier to, if there are any changes in any of your sources, it becomes manageable, much more manageable. Okay. Now you're clear about what is ODS or ADW, right? You employ a database for running your data modeling purposes, for running your business intelligence. That's where Snowflake comes into the picture. Snowflake fits for data warehousing purposes. It doesn't fit for um, e-commerce or business purposes. And this particular environment, we call it as OLAP, online analytical processing. We use this data for our analytical purposes. It's called OLAP. And the other thing is OLTP, online transaction processing. Millions of records that needs to happen in a particular point of time. That is called um, online transaction processing, banking applications, e-commerce. This is OLAP kind of thing. Okay. So data warehouse as a service. What does it mean? So you don't need to have any hardware. You don't need to have any software. You don't need to install anything. You don't need to configure anything. You don't need to manage anything. And this is completely on the public cloud. So if there is any patching or any updates happening, you don't need to have a downtime. Everything is seamlessly maintained by managed by Snowflake. So here Snowflake manages 40% of your administration. So if you are from an admin background, right? So if Snowflake is managing 40%, what would I do now? There are other challenges. So it's a pay as you go model, right? There are a lot of accounting happens. Whenever you run a query, you will be charged this much. How do you monitor them? There are many areas that the focus has been shifted to. The admin becomes a technical accountant here to manage the systems. And so far now there is no carved role of an admin, carved role of a developer, carved role of so they have a role for architect, but the other roles are all uh, based on your talent, based on your resume. They're just picking up and they're using you in a different roles, like the roles that are carved at Oracle admin, SQL Server admin, that is not marked here yet, because 40% of data is 40% of management is done by Snowflake, right? And the other things, they are using the people with the admin talent, and then using the admin activities for giving them the admin activities, and who are in development, who are who have the architecture part of it, they are being hired as their respective roles. Okay, so you don't need to install anything at all for running your Snowflake. You just sign up for a trial account, and trial account it is 80% as good as my production account. I've been teaching folks on the trial account only, and I'm able to replicate, show all kinds of scenarios. Only the scenarios that I'm not able to do is, right, database replication, failover, failback. So there's something like disaster management, right? And there are some things that you still need to talk to Snowflake and then get the access kind of thing. There are some topics, but this replication, failover, failback is the one that we cannot simulate here. I'll give you the content of it. I'll give you the slide deck, how to do and all this stuff. Or if you have any questions in the interview, how do you answer them? I'll give you the slide deck of it, but I cannot replicate. That's not possible in this one. And there are some editions that you cannot have, and some security thing that you cannot do. So there are some limitations. I would say 85% can be done with Snowflake trial account. Okay. And how do you create a trial account? It's pretty simple. Google it, Snowflake trial account. Okay, go for it. You enter your details. Start your 30-day free trial, 400 worth free usage. We'll talk about all of them. So, and if you don't want any mails from them, say continue. And this is the important part. You can choose an edition, like Windows has Home Edition and Enterprise Edition, right? Snowflake has 4 editions: Standard, Enterprise, Business Critical, Virtual, Private Snowflake. So each edition carries the pricing of it. We'll talk in detail. And I want you to go with the Enterprise Edition. And whenever you choose Enterprise Edition, right, Snowflake can be implemented on 3 different cloud platforms. It can be on AWS or Google Cloud or Azure. And I teach most of the part on AWS. Reason? Commercials. 70% of the market is filled with AWS, and 70% jobs in Snowflake are with AWS. So you'll have better marketability. And once you know AWS, right, and cloud or Azure or Microsoft, Azure or GCP are almost similar. And I'm gonna, as part of the program, I'm gonna give you some overview on 2 of the modules in AWS. One is S3 buckets, the other one is EC2 nodes. So these 2 things are behind the curtain. What happens, because Snowflake utilizes these two module capabilities for data storage and running your queries. So you should have some understanding of what's happening in AWS, and you can still have in your resume that you have done something on AWS as well, so that people are much more comfortable that you have the knowledge on AWS. So we're going to talk about the AWS part of it, okay, as and when needed. And then I'll show you a couple of examples on Azure as well. How do you create Azure integrations and all this stuff? But Azure is not part of the curriculum. I'll show you as an extra benefit. And there are some advanced topics I'm going to show you. Once the course is done, right, I'll give you a break for 1 week, and then we'll have all the extra topics covered in 1 week. Saturday and Sunday, so that you'll have them. You can have them in your resume, or you can, if you want to have some knowledge about it, in the interviews and all this stuff. Okay.
Shekhar. Hello.
Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, Shekhar.
Yes.
Okay. How long were you not able to hear me?
It will
Less
just
than
take
a
Two
minute
minutes.
or so. 2 minutes, right?
max.
Okay, fine. Sorry. Yeah, so there is something happening with my audio headset. Anyway, so if you can't hear, right, just ping me so that I can see you and then respond back fast. Don't hesitate to call me or ping me, okay, please. So you choose this particular AWS, and I was talking about the regions, why you have to choose any region is fine, and whichever, if you choose North America, you'll have less charges. APAC Mumbai, 20 cents, 30 cents more charges. The pricing varies based on your cloud provider and then your region. Okay, so you can my company is still in US East Coast, and we access from India. We're all good. I don't see any network latency as such, but it's up to you guys, whichever you want to choose. And I have chosen APAC Mumbai, and then get started. You will get a mail with an activation blue button. Click on it, activate it, and then you will get an URL like this. Okay, so whenever you're talking about this URL, right, this is a trial account URL, and when you work for a company, your company environment, right? 1 second, guys. Um, so you will have something when you get a mail, right? You will get until this only, okay? And you activate it and copy this particular account, and then you open any of your browsers, and then you can open from it. For the first time, it will ask you to create any username which you can log in. So give your username for logging in, and then you will be through, and then you can log into this particular thing. And this is the environment that you log, and you do all your data, i- all your work is in this particular URL only. There is nothing, no installation, nothing at all. You can create your procedures, you can run your programs, you can do data ingestion, you can do all kinds of stuff from this particular browser. You can create databases, you can create schemas, you can do all kinds of stuff. Whatever you are doing in a regular database environment, you can do it from here. Okay. And then, so we were talking about this one, right? This is the account name. So sorry, this is the URL that you have got. And this particular thing is called the account locator or account ID. And this is the region. And this is the cloud provider. If it's GCP, you'll get GCP. If it's Azure, you'll get Azure here. Okay. And if you're working for a company, right, you won't get this random things. You can have your company name as your thing. For example, you can have Accenture dev dot snowflakecomputing.com. This is how a dev environment will look like. They can, or if it is a stage or QA environment, you can have QA. If it is a prod, you won't have anything in. Okay, and this holds good for only the accounts that are created apart from North America West Coast. So North America West Coast is where the Snowflake is headquartered. San Mateo is the name of the county that the headquartered is there, and I lived there for 1 year. I'm just out of it, out of this area. Okay, so once you create an account in North America West Coast, you won't get all this stuff. You will just get only this one. snowflakecomputing.com. Okay, because initially they have thought of having only the account name on the snowflakecomputing.com, and then later realized too much of clients for them, and then they started having the um, uh, um, region as well as account name, so that they can accommodate more people into the same URL kind of thing. Okay, and that is pretty much about it. So let's get back to the differentiation in the architecture. So why is Snowflake different? What is the advantage of having Snowflake? And Snowflake is the only one where they have decoupled, separated the hardware and then the storage. That means if you think you have a storage, let's take an analogy, right? We have external storages, and think that external storage that you can have you can have the external storage of multi terabytes. You can increase. Today you have 5 terabyte external storage. Tomorrow morning you can get 10 terabyte, and day after tomorrow you can have 100 terabytes. And you think that your external storage has about um, 8 ports. So you can have 8 laptops connected to your external storage, and 8 of them have different configurations, starting from a small one, extra small one, to very bigger Apple Mac which has 16 GB of RAM, and the Dell or any low-end model which has only 1 GB of RAM. So you can connect all of them parallelly to your storage at any point of time, and then you can start working. So if you are working with a Dell one which is about 1 GB RAM, the price is cheaper. If you are working with Apple Mac which is 16 GB RAM, the price is higher. The same way, the billing and the storage, these are the two charges that you incur in Snowflake, and then based on the particular laptop that you are using, the cost is also more. Something similar happens in Snowflake. The hardware and the storage are decoupled. It, they both can independently scale. Okay, so let's look at the traditional architectures. So when you talk about Oracle or SQL Server or MySQL, right? They are called shared disk, shared storage, single cluster. It can be multi-cluster as well. They call it as a single server. Okay. So what is a shared disk architecture? That means you have the hardware or the rack servers or anything. So what is it? So what is a cluster? Cluster is nothing. Here they call it as a cluster, single cluster, meaning cluster is nothing but in hardware terminology is a group of servers. You can have 10 servers and you call them as a cluster. It's terminology basically. And then using this rack servers in Oracle, you can connect to one particular storage because the storage is one particular location, and all the servers will interact with the storage. There is only one storage here, and the data sitting in the storage is shared across. That means all the servers can read the same data and then write into same data, update, do all kinds of activities on the same data sets. So when you have single storage and multiple servers trying to read, right, you have IO contention, you have other challenges. Scalability is a bigger issue here. You cannot have multiple storages. You can only have a single storage. So whenever you're writing, reading, writing, ingesting millions of records, scalability an issue. So if you have this kind of system, right, there are some pros as well. That means this particular because of these challenges, right, they have the architecture has matured enough to use metadata of it. So how do you get the data, how do you cache the data so that the performance is much more easier performance. So this has some advantages where it has matured enough in the metadata part of it. They have um, caching techniques. They have optimizers which can go and get your data pretty fast. So those kind of areas, they're much more mature. And because of these pitfalls, right, they evolved a new technology called shared nothing. So what they have done is, right, they couple tightly the storage and the hardware. That means only this particular hardware will talk to the storage, this particular hardware. So you'll have lot of hardwares. It's whenever you talk about this particular shared nothing system, right, it's hardware intensive, like what do you call it, Teradata, Greenplum, uh, Hexadata from Oracle. So this hardware plays a very big role in this, and the data is stored in the storage which is directly coupled with the hardware, and there is a intermediary mechanism which whenever you ingest millions of records, right, the data is striped. That means this particular storage will take some of them, the other storage, the partial data is loaded into storage, and whenever you query, right, this mechanism goes and uses the hardware and reads the data from the storage and gets you. And this is massive parallel processing systems. The hardware runs parallelly. Whenever you run a query, it uses all the CPUs in this particular hardware to read the data. So the performance is very good. It's called MPPs, massive parallel processing systems. So there are still some pitfalls because the data is striped across many storages, and whenever you do insert, you have to take, and the bandwidth between which manages the thing, right? That is the challenge. Trying to talk to all the hardwares, getting the data. If you're trying to do ingestion, so there are some challenges. We cannot go in detail, but if you are looking to get marketed as an architect, you have to go and look at Teradata architecture and then Oracle architecture little bit, or you have to understand these two a little bit in detail. So they might ask you questions on it. I was being interviewed for a director position and then in Fidelity, and they grilled me because I'm not a Teradata guy. I'm an Oracle guy. They grilled me too much into this Teradata part of it because they were trying to migrate from Teradata to Snowflake, and I was I had little bit of exposure on Teradata because in my company, so I gave a reading of that, and then I was able to talk to them comfortably. Okay. So now these two things, right? So Snowflake has basically copied both of them and got a new technology to talk in plain. And Snowflake has identified the pitfalls of both of them. Then they got this particular thing. It's called multi-cluster shared data architecture. That means you have many clusters that can talk to, and the data is shared. It's not shared nothing. The data can be shared. So there is one particular storage, and multi clusters can talk to the same storage. Instead of a single cluster or instead of multiple storages, they have come up with something called multi-cluster shared data architecture. Are we clear? I'll show you how it works in the environment. Okay. And then, so as we spoke about, right, it's a traditional hybrid of sharing the same storage with different clusters, and that is called multi-cluster shared data. And you have to remember this keyword, multi-cluster shared data. This is a Snowflake question as well. Okay. Similar to shared disk architecture, the data can be shared. Similar to shared nothing, it uses multiple clusters to read the data. So this is much more simpler, right? So how does this can happen? This can happen with three different, because Snowflake architecture is different, divided into three different layers. And then let's go back to them. So, and this is something that I have to put it here. Where does Snowflake fit in? Snowflake fits in data warehousing environment. I was just giving OLTP, OLAP kind of thing. Okay. So let's come back here. Snowflake is divided into, to achieve this particular thing, hybrid model, right? The Snowflake has three layers, divided into three layers. One is the storage layer, and the one is the compute layer, and the one is called cloud services layer, or they call it as global services layer. Okay. So the storage layer is the one where you store your data. Okay. And Snowflake utilizes the cloud blob storages. So in AWS, you have S3 buckets, nothing but simple storage service, that is a blob storage. And Azure, you have Azure blobs. And GCP, you have Google storage. It uses the respective blob storages to store the data. If you create a table, the table gets, and if you insert data into that, the table gets into your blob storages on the respective environments. Okay. And if you have implemented Snowflake on AWS, and if you want to read the data from Azure blobs and Google storage, you can still do that. When we come into the cloud to cloud data ingestion part of it, right? I'll show you how that can be done. So there is, so you, when you have to implement on one particular cloud, but they have given the flexibility or feasibility to read from different clouds as well, because you might have your data in North America in AWS, and in APAC you might have employed Azure for your, because for the casting purposes it might be cheaper, you would have employed that. If you want to bring in all the data into Snowflake for your analytical purposes, you can still do that. Okay. And this particular thing is the storage layer and the compute layer. So here, whenever you want to run your query, you have to choose your hardware, you have to choose your cluster on which you have to run your query. Without the cluster, you cannot run a query. And the cluster, it's called virtual warehouse. think of the laptops. Those are all virtual warehouses. You can use any of them to query the data. And if you are running with a bigger one, you'll be charged more. You're running with a lower one, you'll be charged less. Okay, that is the reason that then these particular clusters are called virtual warehouses in Snowflake. The naming terminology is called virtual warehouse. If you see, right, there are 4 of them, there are 3 of them, there are 4 of them, there are 2 of them. That means these many clusters. This is called multi-cluster. Okay, or you can think of, so let's this many servers are there in a particular cluster. You have 4 servers, you have 2 servers, and all this stuff. Okay, so this is the compute layer. How does this work? It utilizes the cloud services, um elastic compute nodes, cloud compute nodes. So each of them have their hardware, and you can use the AWS EC2 nodes, Azure nodes, Google nodes. So they have, these are the servers. They call it as a node, which helps you to execute your queries. Okay, and those are called virtual warehouse. And they, in Snowflake, right, what they have done is they have given predefined sizes that you can use, and t-shirt sizes to make it simple, from extra small to 4XL. So you can create virtual warehouses, or you can choose any virtual warehouse to run your query, and the sizes are from extra small to 4XL. Okay, we'll talk in detail about that. And the other one is cloud services layer. So this is the brain or heart of Snowflake. So this has all the components, how things work in Snowflake. Authentication and access control. The moment you log in, the authentication component will take care of authenticating you. And access control. What are the databases that you have access to? What are the roles that you have access to, and everything. And then infrastructure management. The moment you run a query, it has to, you would have already chosen your hardware, the virtual warehouse or the cluster, and the storage. It goes and links a bridge between these two things, so that whenever you query or insert or do anything, right, you have to fetch the data, select. That is the infrastructure manager. Optimizer. Whenever you run a query, how does the query has to fetch the data? Does it have to go to S3 buckets? Does it have, it has to read from cache? Where is the cache available? And how does it read? Which particular micro partitions it has to read? So all this stuff is done by the optimizer. And transaction manager. Whenever you do any DML activity, right, then you have to probably, so transaction manager comes into picture. It does the commit, rollback, everything is taken care by transaction manager. Security. Whenever you're trying to access a database or schema or a table, whether you have privileges to access it, all this stuff is taken care by security. And there is another big thing called metadata layer. And metadata plays a very key role in Snowflake. All the tables, columns, how many distinct values are there, how many nulls are there, how many, what is the minimum column, minimum of that particular column, max of that particular column, how many distinct values, all of them are stored in the metadata. And which helps you to, whenever you run your query, right, using this metadata, it goes and it fetches your data pretty fast. So we'll talk in detail, but these are the 3 layers. When you talk about interview question, they will ask you about 3 layers, and they'll ask you about what are the components in cloud services layer. And to remember that, think, when you log into the account, authentication happens, and you will see your databases, and on the left hand side in the worksheet, and the roles, and that means you have access to whichever you have access to. Authentication, access control. And the next one is, you want to run a query. So what is the virtual warehouse? This is the virtual warehouse I have. Compute WH extra small is the virtual warehouse. And what is the database? What is the schema? This is storage part of it. So using this, the infrastructure manager helps you to bridge between these two things. And whenever you run your query, right, then what happens? It has to, optimizer has to come into the picture. It has to identify what is the best way to get your data. and then you are trying to run a query. Does it have access to that particular table or not? Does it have an access to database? Security will come into picture. And then you have the whenever if you want to do any DML activity, a transaction manage. So try to remember around the SQL statement, insert statement, login, so that you can easily answer this question. Okay, and then this is what decoupling of data, scalability. We talked about multi-clustered shared data architecture, right? If you look at this scenario, you have databases which is shared storage. Database is single, one location. And if you look at right ETL and data loading, they are using a bigger cluster to read the data. And unless they are using a bigger cluster. And if you look at BI users, right, they can use 3 clusters. Instead of one, they can use 3 clusters to read the data. This is what multi-cluster is. And 2 clusters for test and dev users. Data scientist guys, they are using a bigger one. And then finance guys for reporting. So this is the scalability. This is what multi-cluster shared data architecture. Okay. And we talked about the sizes, right? So as I told you, you have to choose the customized compute cluster. Okay, if you look at it, this is a compute cluster you can choose, and you can choose from extra small to 4XL for running your queries, and this is the sizes. So from extra small to 4XL. In extra small, you have only one server. This is a cluster, right? Cluster is means a group of servers. You have only one server. For a cluster, this is a single cluster that we are talking about. Only one server in a cluster. And whenever you go up, right, it gets doubled. 1, 2, 4. You don't have odd servers here. You'll only have even servers. It doubles up. This is a Snowflake question as well. So whenever you go up, right, how does the virtual warehouse scale up? It doubles up. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. The max is 128. The min is 1. So sometimes people are so stupid that they ask you how many servers are there in 3x large. If they don't have enough knowledge about Snowflake, they might ask you these kind of questions. Then you have to calculate, think through and calculate and answer them. And I have people who have been interviewed and asked this question 3 to 4 times. But they ask for 3XL, 2XL, not 4XL. Okay. And if a particular virtual warehouse, particular cluster runs for one entire hour, you will be charged 1 credit. And the pricing is dependent on the credit part of it. So 1 hour complete 1 hour. That means there can be 10 users, there can be 100 users using the same virtual warehouse and running. If this particular warehouse runs for 1 hour, you will be charged 1 credit. Okay. And if the warehouse runs for 1 second, you will be charged 0.003 seconds, 3 credits. So if you run a query and if the query runs for 1 minute, then 60 seconds is the time that you have utilized, and then 0.003 into 60 is the charges that you are going to get. And if you want to get the throughput, that means there can be 10 people utilizing the same virtual warehouse and you will be charged the same thing. So make sure you use the throughput, so that because if one person is using the warehouse or 20 people who using the warehouse, you're going to get the same charges, right? Try to have more number of people or users to have the best throughput. Are we clear? Yes, are you able to follow me? You have to answer me because we are in different parts of the
Yeah,
world, right?
yeah, Shagar. We're able to follow you.
Thank you. Yeah. So don't feel shy. Talk to me. Then only we'll have the interaction. Um, That's pretty much about it. So please talk to me.
Shaker, this is 0.0003 is actually the dollars you're talking about, or what credits?
No, no, this is the credit. I'll tell you how
Yeah,
to
okay.
get the dollars part of it. This is, they call it as a credit multiplied by your um, edition rate will get you the dollar, because you might be choosing standard edition. We talked about editions when we choose our trial account, right? Based on the edition, I'll come there. Hold on your thoughts. Okay. So this is what pretty much about it. So, and people who don't know, right? This question is, how many clusters do we have for 2x large? Who haven't attended my class previously, right? How many clusters do we have for 2x large?
Only one.
Yep. So this is for single cluster. That means how many servers do we have?
32
Sorry?
servers in 2x.
Yeah. So that means this particular entire configuration is only for single cluster. And the max that we can have in Snowflake is 10 clusters. So if I have 5 clusters with me, right? How many servers will be there in medium?
20.
20.
5 clusters, 20. Perfectly correct. So now you guys understood what I'm talking about, right? So meaning this is the configuration. And if you want to know the original configuration of this cluster, how do you know that? You don't find that in any of your Snowflake documentation or anything else, but I'll show you the real configuration. Okay. AWS EC2 node C. So 1 second. I have already stored it somewhere else. This is the extra small node. This is the machine that they use. It is C5D2X large. Okay. Let's go to the AWS part of it. AWS. So C5D instance with C5D 2x large is the EC2 node that they use as a server. Okay. It has 8 virtual CPUs. It has 16 RAM. 16 they call it as JIB. Okay. And you have this bandwidth. Okay. So and network bandwidth is up to 10 Gbps. And EBS is, you can hear me? Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
locked
Okay.
for around 10 seconds.
Yeah, yeah. There is something with my headset. I'll probably change this one. Okay. So if you look at it, right, this is the EBS bandwidth, means it can read from a storage from S3 buckets with this 2.25 gigabytes per second. This is the network bandwidth, and this is, it has 16 GB RAM. And when you talk about this particular thing, right? So small means 2 of them, 32 GB RAM, and medium 4, 16 into 4, 64 GB RAM. It gets multiplied. This is the basic hardware configuration. So it has 8 virtual CPUs. Whenever you query, what happens? All these 8 CPUs will go and query your data. 8 of them, 8 parallelly goes and reads your data and gets your data back. So that is the reason why it's pretty fast. Massive parallel processing system. Okay. And then when you come back to this one, right? So we talked about these 3 layers, and then so we talked about the cloud services layer as well, and then connecting to Snowflake. So you can use the web UI, the command line interface, ODBC, JDBC, like Java, Python, Node.js, and you can use Snowflake has partnered with many of the tools. So if you come to Snowflake, right, you can have partner connect here, and these are the tools that you have. So you can connect to any of them, and then you can run your queries and all this stuff. Okay. And they have given many connectors. You can connect to Informatica, you can connect to DataStage, you can connect to Tableau, you can connect to ClickView, all of them, many of the. So they have partnered with many of them to make your life much more easier. Okay. And then, so difference between regions. Let's talk about this and look at the casting part of it, and then we'll call it a day today because I don't want to give you more on the first day itself. So let's go to the Snowflake casting pricing. Okay. So if you look at this, right, this is the you are choosing a platform AWS, and then this is the region. Which region? Let's take US East Coast, and region means they have availability zones which they have physical server farm. Basically, that's what it means. So if you look at it, we have 4 editions, and each edition is $2 per credit, $3 per credit, $4 per credit. That means if a virtual extra small virtual warehouse runs for one entire hour, how many credits we are going to be utilizing? One extra small warehouse runs for one entire hour. How many credits will we be burning? 1 credit. And if that is of type enterprise edition, then we will be billed $3. Are we clear? If we are running an extra small virtual warehouse for entire hour on business critical, how much will we be charged? Business critical edition.
Oh, $4. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and if it's a standard one, $2. So if I go and change my region, I'm gonna use APAC Mumbai. Let's look at the prices. See, 2.2, 3.3, 4.4. So based on your cloud provider, based on your region, the pricing varies. I'm getting a lot of echo, guys. Please, can you mute yourself if you're not speaking? Okay. So this is what it is. So, for example, now I'm going to run a query. So worksheets, I'm going to have a table, Snowflake 100. This is the schema, and there is a table called store sales. And if you look at it, right, it has 10.9 terabytes, almost 11 terabytes, and it has about 288 billion rows. Okay. So now if I go and query this, and if you want to get the table name here, right, You can go and then double click, or you can use place name in SQL. You get three dots, you click on it, you'll have the table name here. Select star from this particular table, limit 10. Without the virtual warehouse, you cannot query this. Virtual warehouse is mandatory for your query. Select criteria. Okay, I'm running this. Okay, and I got the data in how much time? 2.91 seconds. Okay, so let's query a different table so that it might be cached or something. You can hold on. Customer has about 4.5 GB. Let's go and query customer. Customer CUS. This is also coming in 1.3 seconds. I want to just, there is store returns. Okay, so this is also 1.3. For example, let's take about your query has consumed 10 seconds. Okay, let's go on. Then I do have it here, but yeah, we have an enterprise edition, and then what is the region that we have chosen? Region is US East Coast, and then the cost per credit. How much is it for US East Coast for enterprise? This is $3, and then your query runtime is almost, for example, 10 seconds, or let's take 60 seconds, and then credits per second. You are using virtual warehouse of extra small 0.0003. Okay, and this is the total cost. Total credits consumed means total runtime into multiplied by your credits, 60 into this one. This gives you this many number of credits. Total credit cost. What is this? So these are the credits consumed multiplied by your total credit cost 3.3. This is equal to, no, credit cost is nothing but $3.2 we have already given. Credits per this one, right? So is nothing but 0 point star 3. So 3.942 rupees, or this much number of dollars. And if you use the same thing, enterprise edition in APAC Mumbai, okay, and how much is in APAC Mumbai?
3.3.
Yeah, $3.3. So let's go back. 3.3, the same. I just copy the whole thing. So it's gonna cost me about 4.3 rupees. So you see a change, right? The pricing depends upon the region and the cloud provider. So if I have to run this on my Azure environment, so I'll go choose Microsoft Azure, and it has limited regions. You cannot have the nearest one is Singapore, and then if you go right, so enterprise edition is $3.7. So I can go here, enterprise Azure and Singapore, right? 3.7. See, how come it's the same price? Yeah, no 4.8, 0.00 difference in the change. Okay, so now you see the difference, right? This is what basically based on the pricing is. Okay, so no, you guys now understood how the costing works, right? And we have two kinds of in things that we get billed normally. One is the compute credits, the other one is storage. So there are two kinds of storages. One is capacity storage, the other one is right on demand. On demand is something like you as and when you go you store it. Capacity means you already have 100 terabytes of data that is available, and you need this much of data or 10 terabytes of data if you want to buy upfront. You have this kind of storage upfront, you want this upfront. When you buy upfront, you will get a cheaper price. And when you go on demand, right, you will get this $46. Okay, so and this is per month, average balance of terabyte per month, and this is the average balance of terabyte per month. So they'll calculate the average balance of how much data that has been stored. Today you might have 1 terabyte, tomorrow half terabyte, day after tomorrow 3 terabytes. They do a monthly average balance and they bill you. Okay, this is what it is. Okay, and I think pretty much. So based on the regions, this is what it is, right? This is what I have shown you an example. The pricing varies. Okay, and Snowflake can be supported on AWS, Azure, or GCP, and you can load your data from your on-premise systems or from the cloud systems. And we have talked about the naming conventions of the URL, and these are all the regions that we have talked about, right? Azure, the orange one, which has lot many things, and then sorry, AWS and Azure is blue, all the blue, and the GCP is red one. And you can have data replicated from AWS to Azure or GCP or anything. So you can have your data replication happen from any point of to any particular cloud as well. They have the inter-cloud portability as well as they have the same cloud portability as well. Okay, we'll talk a little later in detail. And each has a different edition has a different capabilities. So we'll talk in will tomorrow we'll talk about the entire capabilities of all the editions, so that you will have much more clarity. And this particular question can this particular slide can answer 3 to 4 questions in your Snowpro examination. Okay, so today it's already 9:20. We will call it a day, and then we'll catch up evening. So what time you want to do it? So is 4:30 okay for you guys rather than 5 in the evening? Is 4:30 okay for you guys?
Yeah, I'm okay for even 4. 4:30 is fine for me. Yeah.
Okay, so let's have the 4:30 tomorrow, because it's tomorrow morning we'll have the class again You guys can take off today evening, and then tomorrow morning we'll have, and then tomorrow evening also we'll have at 4:30, so that I don't want to rush and push everything to you. So I'm going to send you the slide deck. You can go ahead and create a Snowflake trial account and then play around with it, and then we will continue tomorrow morning. Okay?
Shekhar
Does
sir,
that?
one minute.
Yeah.
Sir, I need Prasad and Dasharath details.
I do
Dasharatha.
have I do have
You
them.
have.
Don't worry. Yeah, I do.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. Okay then. Thank you so much, guys. Welcome to the program, and then let's catch up from tomorrow.